Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is yet another day that the Lord has made, and I want us all to know that we can rejoice in it. Hey, listen, today's discussion is for everyone. It's not solely for the church, for the body of Jesus Christ. This show is for everybody, especially those who do not agree with what the scriptures truly say, or for those who don't agree with what I say at any given moment. I want everybody, please, to listen up. Please pay attention. Especially those that think that loving your neighbor means loving their confusion or their brokenness. Please listen up. Please listen up. And please share this video. Those who believe the old lie of who am I to tell anyone who they can or cannot love, or the who am I to judge guilt trips that's laid upon the nations by a very sneaky and deliberate attack on your very soul. I've said this before, but we had all better be pretty angry, but I want even those of you who do not agree with what the scriptures say, who do not agree with what I say, that I want you to know that you should be pretty angry right now, that you should be pretty ticked off, that you should all know that you've been used. Yeah, you've been used. You've been misled. You've been indoctrinated. You've been an experiment by this dark political mass of deception. You should know that you being used and targeted is no longer enough. It's not enough anymore. So now this dark political mass, they're targeting and preying on and devouring your children and your grandchildren. And they're doing it right before your lazy, blurred, ignorant eyes. See, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is bondage. And I know because I was ignorant. Listen to me. I was the chief of ignoramuses, the chief of sinners. Oh, I know, David, it's not appropriate to call out ignorance. Well, I find it even more inappropriate to not warn you and to not inform you. Because I was in a hotel lobby and I met a woman and I was sitting in the lobby and me and her got to talking and she was telling me where she was from and how she was traveling and she was seeing family and she was doing things and she asked what I was doing and I told her I was on a mission that I was sharing. I was coming to that's when I went to Alabama, and I told her I was coming to bring a message and to share my testimony. And I started sharing my testimony with her of how I came out of the LGBT movement. And you know what she said? She says, I'm a lesbian. Like I was gonna stop. I was like, okay, and I kept going. And we got to talking, and although she truly believed that that's who and what she was, and she didn't believe that that her same-sex attraction was a deception. She was firm on that. But what she did believe and what she did see is that this transgender movement is dangerous and that they're targeting the children. Even she said they don't belong in the schools. She didn't even agree that homosexuals should be teachers. So even the homosexuals see that this transgender movement is dangerous and that it's targeting and preying on and devouring children at such a time in their life where they are so vulnerable. And I want to go to a couple articles today and then a short clip of a video. All of the links for these articles are in the details in the description on the YouTube channel for this video. But I want to go to these and just share some very important information. Many of us never think about these types of things. Well, many people never. I do all the time. So why the sudden obsession with transgenderism? The Los Angeles Times recently published an approving article about schools introducing kindergartners to gender dysphoria, otherwise known as transgenderism. This topic has been much in the news lately, especially after a California charter school, without notifying parents, held a gender reveal ceremony for a confused little boy. We actually had on this show the mother of one of those children about a month ago. And we talked about all that was going on at that time and what they're doing now. The teacher then read to the other children, now confused as well, but for other reasons, from a book written by a dysphoric teenager, a confused teenager. The Times think this is all fine because experts from the radical GLSEN, Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, say it is. GLSEN has infiltrated and been into the public school system since the late 80s, believe it or not. Leftists insist that this kind of activity in schools is necessary to make dysphoric children feel accepted and secure. Maybe. But there is a darker agenda at work here, folks. One that has been in play for at least a century. If you were educated before the onset of Common Core, you probably read the 1932 British novel Brave New World. Shame on me, I've never read it, but I did just order it and I will be reading it. One aspect of the utopia described by Aldous Huxley was the forced sexualization of children. In 1932, this man wrote about what's happening right now. Young children were sent into the gardens naked and encouraged to engage in ordinary erotic play. There's nothing ordinary about erotic play, and there's absolutely nothing ordinary about children being encouraged to do any of this. So the article goes on to say, any child who resisted was trundled off to the assistant superintendent of psychology to determine if he or she was mentally ill. Why would a totalitarian government do this? Wouldn't it be more likely to crack down on sexual relations, the better to control every aspect of human behavior? The answer is well elucidated by J. Douglas Johnson in a recent essay for Crisis Magazine. Johnson explains that the term sexual revolution was coined in the 1920s by Dr. Wilhelm Reich, an atheist psychiatrist in Sigmund Freud's clinic who joined the Communist Party and referred to himself as a Freudo-Marxist. So the sexual revelation was a term that was coined by a man who identified as a Freudo-Marxist. Reich devoutly believed in the Marxist idea of utopia, but he recognized the problem with Marx's proposition that such human happiness could be achieved only by the abolition of religion. When Judeo-Christian religious beliefs were so deeply ingrained in Western countries, how could their influence be eradicated? The family was key. I'm not going to read this whole article. The family was key. Religious faith is passed down through the family, with parents not only teaching children the faith, but taking them to church. But fatherless families tend not to be church-going families. So the goal was to remove fathers. And what better way to accomplish that than through widely accepted sexual permissiveness? Wow. You know, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to move on to another article. The result of this officially endorsed permissiveness and the absolute intolerance for any competing views even unto dismissing parents' objections to what the schools are doing to their children, is an exploding illegitimacy rate from 3% in 1929 to about 40% today. Fatherless families weaken ties to religious faith. Fatherless families weaken ties to religious faith, in turn creating the fertile ground needed for the government, for this dark political mass to plant its totalitarian roots. First, the government destroys the family. Then it has no choice but to step in to take the family's place in the resulting chaos. Evil, yes, but ingenuous. I want to listen to this a short clip of this video. I'm not going to listen to the whole thing, but this is very interesting. And so please listen up.
But I'm interested in it because I want to be for liberation. I'm not going to stop anyone dressing how they will. But there's something weird about lots of young women wanting to be young men and lots of young men wanting to be women. I don't feel as though it's a great step forward myself.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Well, I say in the introduction to my new book, my new collection, my particular transgender rebellion came at a time when there wasn't these ideas in the air that the moment you are dissatisfied with the limitations of your present gender definition, that there is this enormous mechanism waiting to alter your body, to halt puberty, to slow your puberty down. People, all very well-meaning and very sympathetic, are there to provide surgical intervention and potential permanent changes in your body with which there's no going back. Okay, I mean, for me, a sex change operation opens one door but closes many others. Right? I personally believe that anyone who collaborates in an intrusion into a developing child's body and mind is guilty of child abuse, a crime against humanity. Okay, because that child is not prepared to make such a decision. Okay? I think that such decisions about sex reassignment surgery must wait when one attains a majority, which would be, it seems to me, a minimum of age 18.
Now, that may not be the answer to the solution, but it certainly would be a step forward into not allowing 8-year-olds to make the decision. Instead, they would have to wait until they were 18. The trans juggernaut wants your kids, and public schools are just the beginning. If you had argued 4 years ago, pre-Obergefell was the ruling that permitted homosexual quote unquote marriage, that desexing marriage would lead to drag queens leading preschool story time in public libraries, and public schools hounded into hiding their mandatory sex education curriculum from parents after a settlement requiring trans-friendly education starting in kindergarten. You would have been called an unhinged bigot. If you would have argued this 4 years ago, that there would be drag queens leading preschool story time in public libraries, and that public schools would be hiding their mandatory sex ed curriculum from parents. 4 years ago, if you would have argued these things, you would have been called an unhinged bigot. How could what 2 consenting adults do privately have any effect on whether 5-year-olds are told they should consider cutting off their penises? That would be preposterous 4 or 5 years ago. Fear-mongering. Rod Dreher says school has started in my friend's city. 2 kids in the 2nd grade are transitioning. He's a liberal. And even he wonders what the hell is going on. This is a year ago. A year ago. K through 12 school agrees to gender inclusion policy with no notice or opt-out for parents. No notice and no opt-out. after facing a lawsuit over its treatment of a kindergartner who identifies as a transgender. A nationally recognized public charter school in Minnesota has agreed to adopt a far-reaching inclusionary policy. The school also agreed to pay the child's parents $120,000. In the settlement, Nova Classical Academy promised to establish a gender inclusion policy that doesn't allow parents to opt out based on religious or conscience objections, and also not to call parents or guardians' attention to the policy. The agreement ends a 16-month legal battle between the charter school and David and Hannah Edwards, parents of a child who was born male but presents as a girl. The liberal left continues to push their radical agenda against American values. The Edwards family filed a complaint against Nova Classical Academy in St. Paul, Minnesota, claiming the school failed to protect their child and other gender non-conforming and transgender students at Nova from persistent gender-based bullying and hostility. They also claimed the school denied their child the ability to undergo a gender transition at Nova in a safe and timely way. So these unparents filed a lawsuit and won. Gender Justice, a nonprofit legal and advocacy organization for the LGBT movement, represented the Edwards family in the suit against the academy. Settlement makes clear schools have an obligation to keep transgender students safe. You know what? It's very clear that schools have a responsibility to keep all students safe, regardless of their brokenness, regardless of their confusion, regardless of their gender, which there are only two, you know. So regardless of all of that, the schools have a responsibility to keep students safe. But no specific student should be singled out and given special rights above any other student. Because if you're going to force schools to have gender reveal for each student, then guess what? Then undergo a gender transition. So then you better have days set aside for those who live under God's law and who live under nature, that they are either male or female. So for the little boys that identify as little boys, you better have a day set aside for them. For the little girls that are ready to say, I'm a little girl, I might be a tomboy, I might like roughhousing, but that doesn't mean I'm a boy. That doesn't even mean I want to be a boy. You better have a day set aside for them too. Also brought to my attention just yesterday, or maybe the day before, within the last couple days, was that Nickelodeon actor Michael Cohen reveals that he transitioned. Nickelodeon, you know, the children's network. Once again, once again, if you don't see that the children are being targeted and preyed upon, here's actor, I don't even want to call her Michael at this point, but Henry Danger star from Nickelodeon. The person that goes by Henry Danger, but legally is Michael Cohen, has gone public with the fact that she transitioned from being a woman to a man nearly 20 years ago. The actress, 43, who has portrayed Schwoz on the Nickelodeon series since 2014, exposed her journey. She says, I was misgendered at birth. I identify as male, and I am proud that I have had a transgender experience, a transgender journey. She is confused She was not misgendered. There's no such thing as misgendering, unless you're going to call a little boy a little girl. That's misgendering. You're going to call a little girl a little boy, then that's misgendering. But when a little boy is born, then listen to me clearly here. It doesn't matter if the brain develops before the genitals, and it doesn't even matter what genitals develop, because their DNA clarifies whether they are male or female. There is nothing else, nothing in between. There is no spectrum, but there is either male or female. So your DNA is what determines your gender, and your DNA, matter of factly, determines your genitals. So she, this actress that's been in the child's network Nickelodeon for how long? Since 2014. And who knows what she was involved with having to do with children before 2014. But she has been involved with children since we know of 2014. 5 years, she has been dealing with children. And you think that she's not trying to promote, target, prey upon, and devour those children with her confusion, with her lies? She identifies, she's a woman. Her right here, the bearded lady. Didn't people used to pay money to go into the circus and see the bearded lady? Didn't people used to pay to go into the circus and see the tattooed freak? Didn't people used to pay for all this? And now you don't have to, because now people are paying to become the freak show. Now people are paying to get their bodies covered with tattoos, marking their bodies. Now people are paying to be a female that looks like a man. This breaks my heart. According to the publication, Cohen, this confused woman, does not use the word transgender to describe herself, but she does view herself as part of a community that typically embraces that label. And she didn't feel she could be an outspoken advocate until she made her history known. How sad that this woman has been living this lie for nearly 20 years, infiltrating, indoctrinating, and brainwashing children along the way. This is the deception that you should all be pretty ticked off about. This is the deception that should make you mad as hell. That this woman has been parading around, deceiving everybody that she was a man for nearly 20 years. Just think in 20 years, just think in the past 5 years at Nickelodeon, the children's place, how many children have come into contact with her lies, her deception, her demons, her spirits. See, we always see the parents who want to live their lives through their children. We see them all the time. We say, well, why? What are they doing? Why? We talk about them all the time. We have many in our families. We have many that we know, our neighbors. We say, oh, well, they're just living their lives through their kids because they feel like they too have lost something, and because they want to fulfill that loss through their children. So we talk about these people all the time. These people exist. They're part of our lives. We actually exchange the little stories about, can you believe that she's doing this to her daughter, making her daughter go into the cheerleading and doing all the things that she wanted to do and never did. She's living through her daughter. We claim people do this all the time, right? We recognize it. We scold people for it. For one moment. For one moment, I want you all to consider something. Consider the transgender movement, or even the older transgenders, the older confused men who are living as women and women who are presenting themselves as men. Just consider these individuals as that unfulfilled parent that was never satisfied with his or her life, their appearance, their progress, their athletics, whatever. Just for a moment, entertain the idea or the thought of the transgender movement as part of, and just identify them as this parent, the ones that we know that are living their lives through their children. Now think about it. Think about just how these older transgenders, who most of them don't look anything like women, although there are some out there that you would never be able to tell that they're men. But just think about the ones that are pushing this agenda, this movement, the ones that are pushing it. Look at them. Look at the one in the school. What was that school called? Lake something high school. That high school, their cross-dresser teacher. Just look at them. They look nothing like women. They've failed in their minds or in their own eyes. And now what are they doing? They're pushing it on children, and they're trying to get them before they hit puberty so that they can get these children on puberty blockers and they can live through these children. They can live just like these parents are out here living their lives through their children and pushing their children to do things and indoctrinating their children to do things. These transgenders and these pushers of this movement, they're pushers, just like drug pushers. They're pushers. They're pushing this on children to live vicariously through these children. See, back when I did this, back when I was called myself tranny, transsexual, transgender, whatever, back when I lived in this darkness, in this deception, you didn't have a lot of people running around, men dressing like women that you could tell they were men dressing like women. Because when I lived it, you had to be the best you could be, or do the best you could, or not go out in the daytime. Nowadays, they're out in the daytime because it doesn't matter anymore if we see a bearded man walking down the street with lipstick on, high heels, and a man's suit. It doesn't matter anymore if we see androgynous children being targeted and preyed upon, being placed on puberty blockers, things that are killing them. You're putting children on hormones that are destroying their bodies and destroying their health and destroying their lives. And you're all okay with it. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with it. And I think that even the lost person right now, the person that doesn't agree with not one word I ever have said, I think that you right now can see the agenda of this movement and that you are being used, that you yourself are being targeted and preyed upon, that your mind is being or has been devoured by this movement. Because it's so simple, that age-old cliche of, well, who am I to judge? Nobody. You're not judging it. I'm not judging anybody, right? I can tell you that transgenderism is a deception, it's darkness, and those who remain in it and practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And I can say that not because I'm judging, but because God has already judged it. He's already done it. And because I lived it, and I know the emotional turmoil of those that are trapped in it, as well as the emotional turmoil of those who have come out of it and are trying to establish a place and a relationship with not only the church, but those who are still in this movement. My God, Jesus the Christ has told me to establish a relationship with them, to make them aware of what's really happening to them, in them, with them, and all around them. And that's what I'm going to do. Lord willing, I'll see you all tomorrow. God bless. I love you all. Peace.